It's kind of late in the evening of March 25th, on Wednesday, March 25th. And I want to make a quick statement here. It'll go into the shorts. Um, as I see my channel building, what I realize is I need to go back to retranscript some of the things that I've written up until this point. Because I can be triggering and I can be ranting. And when I do that, and along the way for a long time, what I'm writing doesn't make sense to somebody who doesn't know what it's about. And the people who know what it's about, they don't want to say that they know what it's about. Okay, that's just the dynamic of it. So I'm going to be going back to re-narrate in the description commentary to better explain to people what I'm saying. And this realization is thanks to June, who spoke to me in the comments. And I really appreciate, June, your input. It's true that for a long time, the only input I have been getting from people who pretended to be well-intending but were not was criticism. The harsh criticism and the way I was being approached with questions was so upsetting that they were not helping me at all. So criticizing, so judgmental, and not caring at all. In fact, they were wanting to make me, they were wanting to upset me. It was obvious. So anyway, okay, I'm going to be going back and I'm going to be explaining better the narratives. Now, something else I want to point out here is that I was just watching this video. What if the song Simple Man was an Irish folk song? And I wrote in that, let me see if I can just read from what I wrote. It's not eloquent or, beautiful. It's just my recollection of an event that happened in Fairfax Hospital, when I was there for almost 2 weeks after I tried to commit suicide in 2012. I don't say this because I'm looking for sympathy or because I am playing the role of the victim the way that my attackers were accusing me of doing. But what I really think about this memory is how my brain works in a way that saved me. I really think that this how my brain saw the beauty, and there wasn't a lot of beauty to be seen, but how I saw the beauty and related to it in what I was going through was what helped me to get through it, to find my sanity again. And what I said, let me see here. I've got these glasses. What I wrote is, in 2012, I was hospitalized in a dual diagnosis clinic that was in Kirkland, Washington, after attempting suicide. I tried twice and failed. Anyway, I was there for almost 2 weeks. I should say this, that when I got out, it was on the same day that Eric Rasmussen, Multicare's attorney, gave up his license to practice. That was a big deal. I told my trauma therapist, I said, if he gave up his license to practice, what that meant is I wasn't the only one that he was fucking over. Okay? There were other complaints put in about him. So that's just reality. So anyway, I was there for almost 2 weeks. Most of the people there were way younger than I was. That's true. I was like the old chick. There was one chick that was close to my age, but close, but everybody was younger than I was. So I guess it's kind of unusual for somebody my age to have been in that situation. I think it really was. And I've said before that that I really think that I survived because when they started attacking me, I was older. I was 49 years old and I had a strong sense of who I was. So even though the psych drugs were messing up the way that I was thinking, I knew in my core who I was, and I knew that it wasn't my thinking. I just didn't know how to make my thinking override what the psych drugs were making me think. It's been, I'm not into drugs. My ex-husband, I call him my late husband now, but he wrote in a letter in 2019 hoping to help me with Sanofi Pharmaceuticals, the producers of Ambien. And he said, after the Ambien, he never recognized in my personality again who the woman he had known for like 37 years. And that was true. But I'll go back to this letter. Most of the people there were way younger than I was. One of our group exercises was to have the instructor find on her phone. Now, this was in 2012, so November 2012. So, was to have the instructor find on her phone the song that meant the most to us at the time. I chose Miss Sarajevo by U2. She had a hard time finding it, too. It was not coming up. But anyway, that was my choice. Without a doubt, it is universally meaningful, and some in the group were moved by it. However, there was a young man, and a rather quite young man there, and he asked the instructor to find Simple Man by Leonard Skinner to play for the group. While raising him, his mom was alone and single, he said. They were alone together. When he was little, his mom would sing this song to him. As a mom to one son, hearing this song always makes me cry now because I know life is hard for one son who has a single mom, born to a single mom, and an Irish son at that. What a sweet song for his mom to sing to her baby boy. His choice and why he chose it has stuck with me forever, ever since. And that's true. And that's true. It moved me when he told his story because everybody there was there pretty much because they tried to commit suicide. And to see so many young people who were there was very disheartening. I was lucky to be there. It was amazing to me that I got to be there. When I got out, I realized what it's not easy to get into Fairfax Hospital. They were second in the country for treating what they called dual diagnosis, which was emotional problems related to addictions, drug or alcohol addictions. And categorically, that's where they put me. They didn't know what to do with me. So they sent me there, and some very crazy things were done to me there, demonic kind of things, not from anybody in the staff, but I had some very emotional events happen there with some of the people. I may talk about that later because it was interesting, but the crux of what I'm saying here is that there there has been beautiful events, touching events, emotional events with very sensitive people through this, and those one out of, I think I'll say one out of honestly 500 people one out of five, maybe 1 out of 1,000 people who were very sensitive and who I could see would restore my faith in the human race. They were few and far between, but I think being able to see them and to be able to kind of focus on them and put them in my memory banks to remember them, like I remembered that young man. I remember where he sat at the table. I remember what he looked like, and I remembered how he told his story. And it was so tender. It was so tender that my heart went out to him for the world that I know that he had to face, similar to the world that I was facing too, and that all of us sitting at that table were facing. There was another young woman there. She was actually very, very touched by Miss Sarajevo. She asked me, and I remember where she sat too. I remember what she looks like too. And she leaned in and she said that she sang in clubs around the area. She had tried to commit suicide, and she asked me what that song was about. So I told her, and she said, I've got to incorporate that into the songs that I sing in the clubs. And I thought that was great. So we were close. That made us close. But one day we were having an art class, and I went up there. There was a tall table at the front of the class that held some of the art supplies, and I went up there to look over some of the art supplies that I wanted to use. And she came up. We were sitting in tall chairs at that table. Otherwise, we were all sitting at like classroom tables to do the artwork. Anyway, she came up and she sat at the table beside me, and we were talking and we were looking at some of the supplies, and the instructor came into the room, and she set down a pen, an ink pen, and my friend, if you will, leaned across me and picked up that pen. Well, I had sense enough to know we were not supposed to have those kind of things. It was a dangerous situation. One of my roommates was a dangerous woman. She had to be moved out of my room. She was dangerous, almost like she was a demonic plant there. The spiritual aspect of this has been wild. But anyway, she was stealing my things, which I had to say something. And they searched her things and found my things, and they moved her from my room. Well, she was a menace to everyone. And so when my friend reached across the table to pick up the pen that the instructor had set down, she was holding on to it and sort of putting it into her pocket. And I said to myself, this is not good, because if that woman the woman was moved from my room down to the end of the hall where my friend was staying too. And I thought, if that woman gets her hands on that pen, she's going to hurt somebody with it. And that somebody could be me, especially because she was like my next door neighbor in Green Springs. She was like focused on me. So I was worried a little bit that she had maybe put my friend up to that, but I didn't have time to think about that. I just thought, I don't want my friend to have that pen. It's not going to bode well for her at all. So I asked her, I said, can I see that pen for a minute? And of course, we were friends. And she said, okay, sure. And she took it out of her pocket and she gave it to me. So shortly after that, the instructor walked back in through the door, and we were still up there at that bigger table. And I pulled the pen out of my pocket and I handed it to the instructor, and I asked her, "Is this yours?" I knew it was hers. So, "Is this yours? Because I think you forgot it here on our table." That was totally irresponsible of that instructor, because you're talking about groups of people who are suicidal too, not just homicidal, but suicidal, right? I was afraid too for my friend that she might try to use it to hurt herself. So, you know, yeah, and the instructor took it from me. Well, we finished what we were doing at the big table. She went back to the table, and she was sitting at a table across from me and probably 2 seats in, and I was sitting at this table probably 3 or 4 seats in. But either way, grown-ups, if you will, came into the room and they whispered something to her, and she started crying. She started crying, and they took her away from the room. And I asked somebody, "What happened? How come they're taking her away?" And they said she just found out her insurance company isn't gonna cover her the rest of her stay here, so she has to leave. And she was crying about it. And I felt so sad for her, and I thought, I wonder if it had to do with that situation with the pen, if like I got her busted or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. And maybe they were monitoring everybody. Maybe they knew more about it. I really don't know. I only know that I really liked her, and because we had talked other times, and it made me feel so sad for her that she wasn't going to get to stay there. So I mean, she was really sad. She was crying and sad about it. So anyway, yeah, there was so much life that I was living, not normal life to my before world, but to life that that was so meaningful. And yet, my friend Mark, he told me he could quote the Bible like there was no tomorrow. And he said that he believes we are writing the final act to the Bible. And and sometimes I believe that, because it's true that Jesus has, performed so many miracles that if they were all written, there wouldn't be enough room on the earth to hold all the books. But so much is being written right now that doesn't seem to matter. Like, nobody cares. Nobody cares about anybody. It's dog eat dog. And through it all, I've seen so many beautiful people that they're what makes the world go round, and I don't think they even know it. I don't think they even know it. So I don't know what to say beyond that. That's all I can say. There are so many beautiful people, and this world is killing them. This world is literally killing them. And it's very frustrating to see happen when awful, stingy, selfish, demonic people are winning. I don't know. So many stories. Even when I could go on. When I went to Pierce County Crisis Center, the people I met there, that place was so dilapidated. I was there in January, and the big heavy drape, the place was old. probably built in the 1920s or 30s, and they had huge, heavy drapes on the windows, but the windows had so many leaks that the cold air from outside literally blew the drapes out from the wall. We were sleeping on plywood. And because of my neck injury, I took my pillow with me, my neck pillow with me when I went to St. Joseph's Emergency to find help there. And so I had it with me when they sent me to the Pierce County Crisis Center, but they took it away from me. So I had to sleep on the plywood. There was a pregnant woman. The place was so crowded that there was a pregnant woman sleeping on the floor. I wanted to give her my plywood, but she said no, she will be fine on the floor. And our blankets were little and hardly even. There was no warm or hot water. The water was only cold. So if we needed a shower, it was cold. It was freezing. There were men and women there. I thought there was somebody locked away in a room, like an isolation room, and it had a window, just a small window, so that the staff could look in to see what was going on in there. And that person was banging and banging and kicking and banging on the door. And I swear that the person had kind of a straitjacket thing. I don't know. My trauma therapist or the social worker, when I first got into trauma therapy here, told me that they're not allowed to do that to people anymore. That was in 2006, January 2006. So I don't know, and in Washington. So I don't know if they were allowed to do that, but that's kind of what I remember. There were people sleeping in the hallways, co-ed, men and women. There were troubled people sleeping on benches and on the floors in the hallway. And the food was not even, the staff was amazing. They were the most kindest, beautiful people in this horrible place. And I think I'll have to go back to see, but I think that I spoke about it or wrote about it somewhere, because I write on Facebook, I write on the descriptions in YouTube. So somewhere I wrote about it, and they came in on day 3 of my being there. The social worker came in and she said to me, I cried for 3 whole days. They had been stalking my house. Somebody had been stalking my house. Multicare was serving me with court summons that I didn't know what that was about. They had already been fucking with me. For the whole year of 2005. The things medically that they did to me was nothing less than sexual assault. Okay? I'm telling you, this is true. They literally assaulted me physically. They did. And so I was crying and crying for 3 days, afraid. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be by myself. I didn't know how to tell my late husband what was going on. I wanted to prove to him I could survive without him so that he would know that I loved him. I just felt like he didn't understand that I loved him. And because he said, without me, you won't make it. And I said to myself, I'm going to make it. Not only am I going to make it, I'm going to make it, and I'm going to make it good. This was after the Ambien. I was all fucked up. But I said to myself, I'm going to make it, and then I'm going to show him how much I love him. That was my whole idea. And then he will know I love him so much. I never got to do that. So I was there, and I didn't want to be alone because I was afraid. I was afraid to be at my house because somebody had been surveying watching my house for the days while I was gone to know exactly when I came. I didn't know it was my neighbor Catherine. I didn't know. Anyway, see, now I'm starting to rant. But I was at the Pierce County Crisis Center for 3 days, just crying and crying and crying. The ladies there knew what was being done to me. So many people have known because they know. And I was telling them, and they knew better than me. I was just telling them what I was experiencing, and then they knew what was being done to me. So the one woman came in on the third afternoon, and she said, "You have to pull yourself together. You have to pull yourself together because they're going to come this evening to condemn this place." Well, that wasn't a surprise, But anyway, they got the word that the place was probably going to be condemned, and probably that evening when the county showed up to inspect the place. And she said, "If you're here, you are going to get hauled out. Look at around you at all these people, and you're going to get hauled out of here to someplace worse than here. And we won't even know where they're taking you because they're going to be distributing all of you to places that we won't even be able to keep track of." She said, "It won't matter that you came here voluntarily because there's a difference. If you take yourself voluntarily, you can exit yourself voluntarily. You're in control. So, but if you're not, if they put you there, you're there against your will, and you have no choice for how long you get to stay there." So she said, "You're here voluntarily. They won't know that, and they won't care, and you're going to get lost in that system." And it would have been the perfect, I probably would have ended up not back, because I'd never been there. I probably would have ended up at Western State Hospital, where that multicare doctor's psychiatrist's father worked and experimented on people. I'm telling you the truth. They tried to put me in jail. They tried to institutionalize me. They did. I've got the court papers. I've got the court papers. What can I say? Nothing that I'm saying here is untrue. So, thank God. She said, "Look around you. You don't want to get stuck in this. Please try to pull yourself together. Do you think you can pull yourself together?" I said, "I'll pull myself together." I'll pull myself together. And I did. Because when I told her yes, then she was able to get the ambulance ordered to take me back to St. Joseph Hospital, who had sent me there. Well, I know that I did write about this because St. Joseph Hospital never had record of my being there on January 3rd, so they never had record of my being there in my insurance paperwork, and St. Joseph Hospital didn't have the records of my being there either. The records disappeared. I wonder how that could have happened. And the only evidence the only evidence I was able to find when I was doing the research in 2018 and 19 of my being there was the emergency room doctor billed outside of St. Joseph Hospital. That's the way they do it. And that EOB was not destroyed. So it showed I saw her and my insurance paid for that bill of hers. That was one way I got to prove to myself I had been there. The other way was I called Pierce County, because that facility did get condemned. It was a big deal in the newspaper about a week after I got out of there, that I was out of there. And when I called in 2018 or 19 to get copies, they didn't have anything. She said, we don't have any of the records from our crisis center. I don't know if you were there for alcoholism. Hell, she didn't have. This is all intelligence running this. They know what the fuck they're saying, and so it's all the insurance companies. They know, they're keeping track. So I said, well, I asked her something, and she said, oh, let me look. And what they did have was the admitting papers. And they showed my name being in, because I was asking her about the day. I said, it seems like I thought that I'd gone there like December 29th or something like that. But she said, let me look a little further, because she goes, we do have like the admitting, who got admitted. And then she found my name on January the 3rd. So I asked her, can you send me a copy of that? She said, yeah. So she sent me that. Then also, there was a billing for the ambulance that took me from St. Joseph to the crisis center on January 3rd, but there was no billing, return billing, but I was returned by ambulance. There was no return billing from that in the file, and there was no information from the emergency room of my having been returned. So yeah, it's all been pieced together, but is it just incompetence? I don't know. I don't think so. Because on the night of January 3rd, they could have sent me to Swedish from St. Joseph, but the social worker in the hospital there that night sent me on purpose to the crisis center. And that, oh my God. But the staff was, the staff was wonderful. They were wonderful. Yeah. I should focus on that. There really are some wonderful people. And thank God to that social worker who knew to get me out of there, because if they would have collected me up with everybody, she was right. It was going to be the end of me. And that's what she said. She said, it will be the end of you. When I got home, my mom and my sister were in my driveway. They were trying to report. It was day 3 of my being gone, and they were trying to get the police to take a missing persons report on me. They were really upset that they were so happy when my car pulled up into my driveway. They're like, oh my God, there you are. This put my family through hell. It literally did. And yeah, I would have disappeared, and when my name came up, they would have made sure that it was the end of me. There's no doubt. But the experiences have been lucky. They've been lucky. Honestly, I'm glad that woman came and told me, pull it together. I feel like she was saying, they're after you, man. You don't belong here. They're after you. Pull it together and get home. Okay, I will. It didn't make, I was going to say it didn't make things better for me, but I guess in a way it did, because if I would have been lost in that western state and had people like that rubber sergeant's father performing psychiatry on me, oh my fucking God. I'd laugh, but it's not even funny. What they do to people in that place is murder